Welcome to the Momentum Trading Group Trading Room. We're going to be discussing trends and analyzing and reviewing and understanding trends. If you would, first thing we want to look at, this is the S&P over the course of pretty much the last year. If you go back, actually it's close to 2 years. So if you look back here, it's all the way from October all the way through till October here. So you can see we pretty much are trading roughly the last year here. So you'll notice whenever we start talking about trends of the market, what we want to be able to look at is on any one given chart, we're comparing three basic trends. So the very first trend that we're looking at here, which would be this line, we would call this this moving average here would be the 300 period moving average. Now, we're going to talk about what that means here in just a little bit and how we use that. But you'll notice that the slope of the moving average, in this case, the red and the purple, they're both sloping up. So we could use that as just a general gauge to say that those trends, as it relates to that, they're in uptrends. You'll notice that this blue line is sloping down, which would indicate that this is the very, very top here. We could say we have a little bit of a downtrend forming as it relates to that. Now, whenever we start identifying trends, there's always going to be multiple trends on one chart. The very first thing we look at is we call it the prevailing trend. The prevailing trend is the longer term trend. In this case, is going to be represented by the purple line. That's going to be our prevailing trend, okay? So if we start looking at the prevailing trends and we start analyzing that and we say, okay, well, our prevailing trend is clearly up. Then you have what's called your primary trend, which is the red line. Now, primary trends, when we start talking about primary trends, this is the major one that we want to focus on any chart time frame that we're looking at, okay? So in this case, as we're looking at this market here, we want to say, okay, what's the prevailing trend? Is up. What's our primary trend? It is also up. And then we're going to talk about our short-term trend. So on a daily chart here, we're just looking at the overall sense and direction over those multiple time frames. Okay, so now we're going to zoom in here and we're going to talk about this on a much closer level. So here we've zoomed in. Now we're looking at this. This is going to be a 30-minute chart. Okay, and this is going to give us an idea of our trends again. Now, what we pay attention to here is we're going to look at, on this particular chart, this blue line is going to be equal to, go ahead and make sure everybody mutes their phones, please. This moving average here, you'll notice how it is creating these peaks and valleys, but it's overall in a downtrend. Our primary trend is down on our 30-minute, which is our red line here. So when we start looking at the markets, we start identifying what our trends are and what direction do we want to be trading as it relates to our trends. So as you see this here, we are in a downtrend as it relates to this red line, and you'll notice how we are also in a downtrend relative to our blue line. Now, whenever we look at these trends, you'll notice how even right through here we had what we call a counter trend movement. And why we call that counter trend is when you identify trends as it relates to moving averages, we were below the red line, but we were trading in the direction of the red line or the blue line there. So this is a counter trend movement. So our ideal setups are when we're trading in the direction of our red line. What is the direction of the trend? So right through here, we would want to get this move down. Right through here, we'd want to get this move down. Right through here, we'd want to get this move down. Those are our ideal trades or areas relative to our trends. Those are what we're looking for. So whenever we look at charts, we always want to identify what's the slope of this red line on a 30-minute chart. Okay, now what you're going to see is now we're going to go to a 5-minute chart where the bulk of our decisions are made as it relates to our trading. Okay, now when we look at this red chart here, this purple line is now equal to the red line on our other time frame. So if you'll notice here where it says right here, it says 1984, 1985, basically, between 1984 and 1985 and 1984 and a quarter. So if we go back to a 30-minute chart and we look at our red line, you'll see it's right there at 1984 and 3/4, right there. So that tells us this line here is equivalent to our purple line on our 5-minute chart. So when we come back to our 5-minute chart and we see this line, we're below that price action on that moving average. Okay? So when we are looking at this particular trade, what we're comparing is what's the overall direction, or what's the primary trend, or the prevailing trend, excuse me, on our larger time frame. And then we look at our red line here and we identify what our primary trends are on this time frame as well. Okay? Now we can learn to trade in the direction of both the primary trend, which is our red line, and our prevailing trend, which is our blue line. But the amount of money that we look to make per trade is going to be different. Okay? So if you look at our prevailing trend, which is the purple line, is down. And our primary trend currently is also down, which is the red line. So if we're taking any trades, we want to be short all the way through here. Now, if we want to be long and we want to get some of these movements here, right, we would look at different trend lengths to do that. Okay, so on a 5-minute chart, we want to focus on this red line. This is our ideal, or what we call our primary trend. Okay. Now you can see, if you scroll back through here, notice that the majority of the time, price stays below this purple. See how it comes right up into the purple here and hits its head? You're going to see it in here in just a second. Right through here, see how it came up and hit its head? Right through here, came up and hit its head. So you guys can see how when we look at this particular trade, you can see how when it's up into these zones, those are great areas to take it short. Now, where would we trade this the opposite direction? Where we could possibly trade this the opposite direction is when we see areas where it's back above this particular trend. So you'll see right through here to see where it turned where it went above the green. This could be a possible area that we could trade it to the upside. Right here where it's above the green. Right through here where it was above the green. Those are potential areas that we'll trade that, but we'll actually trade that the opposite direction, meaning we'll trade it this way, but what we'll do is we'll actually zoom in on our shorter time frame charts. So you'll hear us talk about our 1-minute charts. So let me go ahead and clean off our chart here and let me zoom in. Okay, so you can see right here, do you see this arrow? This was a trade. We actually just took this trade live. Those that are in there should see that we would have taken that trade and would have made a full 1 point. Because again, we look for very, very short-term trades here when we're trading against the trend. So if we come back here, you guys can see this movement right there, this long entry, this push up here on the 5-minute was equal to this push here on the 5-minute. So these little pushes to the upside, if we want to trade these counter trend movements, we actually zoom into our smaller time frames and we look for trend reversals right here. So a couple of the trades that we caught today, we caught a trade through here today, we caught a trade through here today, we caught this short through here, and then we just caught this long right there for 1 point. So that's typically That's typically how we look at the markets when we start identifying trends. Now, the other thing we want to start looking at when we start talking about support and resistance, here's what we want to do. You always want to start on your primary chart, which is your 5-minute in this case. Okay? And what we're looking for is we want to identify ranges or peaks and valleys of our particular chart. So if you'll notice right through here, oops. Right through there, we would call that resistance, okay? We can see right through here, we've got support. Support's the floor, resistance is the ceiling. So you can see how we've created this range in price that we're currently trading between. Now, if you go back in time, and we'll zoom out here. Let's go ahead and clean that up. So you'll notice how this will create a series of levels. And we're going to just draw some lines here. And again, I'm not looking for exact highs like this. I'm not looking for exact highs. This doesn't mean anything to me. Up here, I'll show you. Let me get it highlighted here. This doesn't mean anything to me. Right here, this high. Means nothing to me. What I'm looking for is I'm looking for consistency. So I'm looking for prices like right through here where it acted as resistance, where it acted as resistance. I want to see prices like right through here where it acted as resistance, acted as resistance, acted as resistance. To me, that would be our resistance level right there. Okay? Coming right through here, we can see it acted as a support level, and then it later acted as a resistance level once we got below this line. But you'll notice, guys, you see how when this thing broke right through here, which that price is 2006 roughly, and you can see we're currently trading at 1979, 1980. Now, when we see these counter trend movements, okay, when we see these counter trend movements, again, I'm gonna go ahead and draw them for you. So you can see counter trend, counter trend, counter trend, okay, counter trend. So you'll notice all of those counter trend movements. Notice the velocity or the momentum when this thing really took its drops. And you'll hear Dave and I, you've heard us talk about this already, which is our time correlations, right? So we start talking about time correlations. What we're looking at is we're looking at when they drop versus when they come up. How far do they drop? How fast do they drop relative to time and price? And you'll see right through here, you can see we have this major drop down, this little recovery, and then this another leg drop down, and then we had this little recovery, and then we had this other drop down, and then we've had this kind of flat recovery. So you can see how it's stepping down with this moving average, with this purple line. So that ultimately, guys, is what we're looking at when we're talking about the overall trend, and we're looking for areas where we want to be able to take this to the downside or to short. That's what we're looking for, is we're looking for what is the prevailing trends. As you guys can see right through here, as I highlight this, you guys can see that the majority of trading in our primary trend is still down across the board. Okay, you can see how it had been up back through here. So if I'm looking at this and I'm brand new to charting, the very first thing I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I'm trading in the direction of that purple line. Okay, let me go ahead and delete those. I want to trade in the direction of this purple line here. Notice that when price is above this purple line, let's just go ahead and let's just make this simple real fast for everybody to see. So the very first thing we want to do is we want to see what is the direction of this purple line. Because whenever it's going up, notice what price does right through there the whole time. Stays higher. So down here at the low where it broke, that was 1976. And then from there it went from 1976, it went up basically 30 points from there to there. Once it broke that level, which again we can see here, it's pretty much gone straight back down from 2004 back to 1978. Now, the one thing we're looking at here is getting back to this level when we talk about support and resistance. Let's go back to this because this is very valuable to be able to see this real quickly. So you guys can see the last time we were down here, 1970 was a pretty good low level on this. So we would consider this area, right down here a potential buy zone. That would be a potential buy zone for us. And we can see up through this zone up here, that would be a potential sell zone. Now, I also like to point out that we kind of have a midpoint here too, which is kind of in the middle, which would be right there. So if we're looking at this chart, we would break this chart down into basically 3 zones. And you can see we're currently trading in the lower half of the zone. So imagine, guys, if we were to take a trade, risk to reward, which is different than trends. Let's say we bought this market right now at 1977. We would be risking 7 points because we know that we have lows down there at 1970. So that's 7 points that, potentially it could still fall. Again, this is a 5-minute chart. Okay, but even back up to the midpoint up here, think about that. From 1977 back to 1993, that's, potentially that's 16 points. So risk to reward, that's not a bad scenario, right? But notice, what are we doing on all of our trends? So let's go ahead and let's go and delete these off there. So if we zoom in here, we're talking about trends. Prevailing trend, primary trend, and short-term trends are all down. This is when we'd be looking to get to benefit from the downside on this. And it's trading in the direction of all these trends. So you're seeing this major slope to the downside. Market's extremely heavy here. That's where you'll hear Dave refer to that. So you guys can see short-term trend, which is our 1-minute trend, our primary trend, which is our 5-minute trend, and our prevailing trend, which is our 30-minute trend. All of them are going down, right? And so you guys can see this low right through here. See how we came below it? Now we've really started to break. Where's this headed? If we go back to our charts here, this is probably headed back down into this 1971 range. We're probably headed back down to this 1971, 1970 price. Okay? So just keep that in mind when you're looking at the markets, is identifying the different peaks and valleys. Now I'm going to zoom out real quickly back to our 30-minute chart just to kind of recap and just review a little bit here. Okay, so again, this also makes it very clear. Let's go ahead and delete all these lines here. Let's remove all drawings. You guys can see right back in here, which is the lows, we can do the exact same thing as it relates to creating boxes, potential buy zones. And you guys can see we had this peak right through here where it failed more than once. So this is a pretty good area too. And notice it's right around the 2,000 price range. So you'll see this print on the chart just 1 second here. Pretty good little area as well. So this market is headed back down. So if you see the red line, do you see when we're above the red line? Notice what price does. Remember, the red line on this chart is equal to the purple line on a 5-minute. They're the same price. So you can see when price is above this line here, you can see what the price does. Go ahead and wait for that to print on your chart. So as this populates on your chart, you'll be able to see basically the 3 lines of that purple line. So if you were benefiting from the market going down here, could you have made money? Same thing here, benefiting from the market trading up. Here, benefiting from the market trading down. So you can see how just paying attention to that purple line can be extremely valuable. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this call up. I'm going to take questions in just a second. Let me just stop the recording here.